What's happening, everybody? On today's show, the Doak Walker Award watch list is out with a ton of SEC snubs. We'll tell you who made the list and who didn't. We'll continue to go around the conference with notes from several SEC schools continuing their fall practice. And today we're going to talk about the Tennessee Vols with Eric Cain of Locked On Vols to preview their 2023 season under Josh Heupel with new quarterback Joe Milton. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat with any purchase. You will not want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise you. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start over at Alabama as Nick Saban praising his offensive line following Wednesday's practice, meeting with reporters, singling out guard Terrence Ferguson, who he said is playing really, really well. Saban said Ferguson has gotten bigger and stronger after he's always had that explosive power and the big body frame. Played in a couple of games last year. Saban said he's very confident in what he's doing, showing a lot of maturity. I look at him as a starter on our team. Saban said he believes there's a handful of players who could be offensive line starters as they continue through camp. He said we're going to see what best combination is as we go through camp. Seth McLaughlin, starting center at the end of last year, asked about him. Nick Saban said he's done a really, really good job. He's gotten bigger, gotten stronger. He's always had a tremendous attitude. I don't think anybody's ever going to go wrong with him. He's got the right stuff. McLaughlin played in 11 games last season, started 8 of them. There was some upbeat good news with Alabama as well concerning their broadcaster Eli Gold. He's been battling cancer. He will return to the broadcast booth this season after missing all of last year. Nick Saban asked about it this week. He said that he loves it. He said he loves Eli. He said he's been with him a long time. Kind of part of the tradition around Alabama with the expectation of being the voice of the Crimson Tide Network. Saban said whether it's the radio show or whatever it is, I'm just happy for his family that he's getting healthy and he is going to be able to be around. Gold has been the radio broadcaster for Alabama football and basketball since 1988. So good to have him back. And in recruiting news, just the day after Alabama flipped a commit for the 2024 class, they added another one. In-state safety Rydarius Morgan, who goes by Red. He announced his flip from Florida State to Alabama on Wednesday. He goes to high school in Phoenix City, Alabama. He is teammates with defensive line commit Isaiah Fega, who flipped to Alabama from Utah back in June. But Morgan originally committed to Florida State back last month, and now he is flipping to Alabama. 17th commit for Alabama's 2024 class, and he is ranked as the second safety commit, 4th overall defensive back in this group. The Tide flipped Peyton Woodyard earlier this week from Georgia. Morgan is a 3-star talent in the class of 2024, the number 54 overall safety, considered the number 14 player out of the state of Alabama. All right, some fall camp notes quickly over at Mizzou. They practiced indoors yesterday at their new $33 million practice facility. Looks fantastic from the pictures I've seen. Former quarterback Chase Daniel stopped by to visit and check things out. As far as practice goes, kicker Harrison Mevis, one of the best in the conference. He has been impressing, making all of his kicks throughout fall camp so far during a half-field 7-on-7 drill. Running back Nathaniel Pete made a couple of nice sideline catches coming out of the backfield, catching them from Brady Cook. And Luther Burden, their big-time receiver, coming down with a big-time catch from Jake Garcia with a defender on his back. Mizzou, they're going to open their season 3 weeks from tonight, hosting South Dakota. Folks, we are that close. Mizzou and Florida both going to have that Thursday night game in week 1. Don't forget, Vandy, they play Hawaii in week 0, so they're even closer. few other camp notes over at Ole Miss. They continue their quarterback battle with, of course, Jackson Dart, Spencer Sanders and company. But whoever's going to win that starting job, man, they've got some weapons to work with. You know, Quinshon Judkins making the Maxwell Award watch list after being the reigning SEC rushing leader. At tight end, they had 2 Mackey Award watch list members in Caden Prieskorn and Michael Trigg. At wide receiver, 2 more preseason honors, Zachary Franklin and Trey Harris, both named to the Bolitnikoff Award watch list this week. And you include in that mix veteran wideout Jalen Knox, who's entering his senior year, and other veterans like Jordan Watkins, Braylon Brown, J.J. Henry, Dayton Wade, freshman who's been catching a lot of eyes, Aiden Williams and Caden Lee. Rebel receiving core is loaded, and they're trying to get all these guys work. In fact, Jalen Knox, after practice this week, said, I feel like we've got one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. We're all on the same page. We're all locked in. We're all growing. We know what we've got in our room. We got to keep working on it, put on a show when Saturday comes. So, obviously, look, still waiting to hear who's going to be the starter there. We may go into the season not knowing who the starter is, but my money is on Jackson Dart. Feels like he is going to be the guy. Over at Mississippi State, Zach Arnett, first-year head coach, implementing a pair of practices at the South Farm on campus, working that into their preseason camp plan. It's an old-school approach to taking their practice to the other side of campus, and it ended with Arnett placing a football inside the 2-yard line and declaring it was a 4th and goal and would be a live rep between the first-team offense and first-team defense. State put on the full pads for the first time to close out 6 straight practices to open preseason camp. Zach Arnett said, put the pads on, picks up the intensity. If it doesn't, you won't find yourself onto the practice field getting very many reps. State will take today off before they return to their regular practice field at the Seal Complex on Friday. Over at Tennessee, Kelsey Pope taking over as the wide receiver coach last season. And, of course, they had a Bolitnikoff winner in Jalen Hyatt. And Kelsey Pope, talking with the media on Wednesday, was asked about his wide receivers that he coached up. Of course, Hyatt and Cedric Tillman both off to the NFL. And he said, look, I think it's awesome to see those guys going on to have success at the next level. But quite frankly, that's our expectation. You hear a lot of people say things about this offense, this and that. People make up what they want to. This offense helps guys win one-on-one matchups. That league is all about one-on-one matchups in the NFL. Things those guys are doing there. It's an expectation from everyone in this building. We're going to see if that can translate to some of these guys. And Dante Thornton, hoping to be one of those guys. He's a transfer wide receiver from Oregon who's coming over to Tennessee. And he has been turning some heads, and a lot of people think that his speed is going to pay off. He was clocked at 24.3 miles per hour during a play at Oregon last season. He revealed Wednesday that he has been mostly working out of the slot, but he has split outside the numbers as well. So what role is he going to fill? Is he going to be that Jalen Hyatt role this season? We will see. But obviously, a ton of weapons with Squirrel White out there, Brew McCoy, and Joe Milton. Can he get him the ball? We'll talk more in depth on the Vols here in a little bit with Eric Cain. All right, the Doak Walker Award preseason watch list is out, and they sent out a release on Wednesday naming 75 running backs throughout college football as ones to watch. Of course, we got Quinshon Judkins at Ole Miss and Rocket Sanders at Arkansas, two of the better running backs in the country, returning in the conference. Michigan's Blake Corum is on there, Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. But how about this? No Alabama running backs on the Doak Walker watch list. There is a former Alabama running back, Trey Sanders. He's on the list for TCU, where he transferred. No Georgia running backs either. And I don't know, it just kind of stuck in my craw as I was running through this list of 75 names from the SEC. Here's who made the list. Quinshon Judkins and Rocket Sanders, as we mentioned. Also, Noah Cain and Josh Williams from LSU. So two guys there. Jabari Small and Jalen Wright at Tennessee. So two guys there. Jaquavius Marks at Mississippi State also making the list. But kind of weird. Only 7 running backs from the SEC on this list, and 4 of them coming from 2 schools. There were 75 names on this list. And so I figured I would throw in, here's a couple names that I thought should have made the list. Alabama, I would have put Jace McClellan on here, although I do think the freshman Justice Haynes is going to make a push for next year. We'll put his name on next year's list. But Jace McClellan should have been on here. Jarquez Hunter at Auburn. Look, I know the suspension or whatever he's the issue he was having there at Auburn was back in practice the other day. But like Jarquez Hunter deserves to be on this list hands down. Florida, look, I wouldn't have been mad if you would have went with Montreal Johnson or Trevor Etienne, but in all honesty, I would have put both of them on this list. You got 75 names. Georgia, obviously loaded backfield, but how do you not put Kendall Milton on here just out of respect for what Kendall Milton is? Again, another guy who's been banged up, but still deserves to be on here. Kentucky, Ray Davis coming over from Vanderbilt. He was a top 5 rusher in the SEC last year. And Doak Walker, watch list, they just ignore him. So those are all guys I thought should have been on this list. Other guys in the SEC that could make a leap this year. Missouri, you got Cody Schrader, who had, almost 750 rushing yards last year with 9 touchdowns. Maybe throw him a bone and say that guy's going to be a stud this year. South Carolina, I would probably have left Juju McDowell off, but he could surprise this year. At A&M, could have made a case for Amari Daniels, Le'Veon Moss. Obviously, don't know who's going to be the starter there. And at Vanderbilt, Cedric Alexander, I think is going to make a big name for himself as a freshman this year. Looked really good in the spring game. But, those guys, I'm not so frustrated that those guys aren't on the list, but, man, the other ones from McClellan to Jarquez Hunter, the 2 Florida running backs, Kendall Milton at Georgia, Ray Davis at Kentucky. What are we doing, Doak Walker? I think I read they had like 3 different Colorado running backs on their watch list. What are we doing? Come on, Doak Walker Award watch list. Let's get this together. A few other notes here as we continue to go around the conference. Over at A&M, the 12th Man Foundation put out a statement on Wednesday that it plans to discontinue its name, image, and likeness arm, the 12th Man Fund, following an IRS memo from earlier this summer. The IRS offered their legal stance on tax-exempt NIL collectives and funds, and so they are having to pull back. The decision was made to ensure the 12th Man Foundation meets its high standards for compliance and protect their mission. The decision does not prevent the 12th Man Foundation from supporting NIL opportunities for student athletes for the Aggies, but they will have to alter their approach in how they pursue things. Over at Auburn, a lot of focus on their schedule. It is a tough one. They play one of the toughest schedules. Hugh Freeze coming into year one with LSU, Alabama, and Georgia all on the schedule. And Stanford Steve joining Sports Center him from Sports Center. He was joining Greg McElroy and Cole Kublik on Wednesday. And they asked him, can you get behind Auburn over 7.5 wins? And he said no, mostly because of inconsistency at the quarterback spot. He said Peyton Thorne and, just getting there and considerable roster turnover, he would not be taking the over 7.5. But he said getting to 9 wins in the regular season probably seems to be in the top possible task playing in the SEC West. Just thinks it's going to be tough on Hugh Freeze in year one. Meanwhile, Colin Cowherd made an appearance on Greg McElroy's Always College Football podcast this week and made his national championship prediction. He said, first year, Brian Kelly got the offense kind of figured out. Now he's going to get that defense figured out. I have Michigan facing LSU in the championship game. He said, I don't think LSU is the best SEC team. I don't think they're the deepest, but I love the coach in Brian Kelly. I love the quarterback in Jane Daniels. I looked at their schedule, and I'm like, it's going to be a lot of people knocking each other off. I just like LSU a lot. So Colin Cowherd saying if LSU beat Michigan in a competitive game, that would be good for college football. He said, I think them dominating and suffocating teams will be interesting. I don't think we will see that this year, but we will see. And one quick note before we get to Eric Cain to talk all things Vols. ESPN put out their broadcasting teams ahead of the college football season. A few changes in just what you'll see across the networks. Todd Blackledge left this offseason to go to NBC. So ESPN, you had Greg McElroy with Joe Tessitore. They're taking Greg McElroy off. That McElroy is going to go join Sean McDonough, and they will do the Saturday night primetime game on ESPN with Molly McGrath as their sideline reporter. So Sean McDonough with Greg McElroy, Molly McGrath, Saturday night primetime on ESPN. Saturday night primetime on ABC, that once again is Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, and Holly Rowe. So no change there. One other change we will see joining Joe Tessitore will be Jesse Palmer. Jesse Palmer was doing a lot of studio work the past few years. He's coming out of there back into the booth. He will replace Greg McElroy alongside Joe Tessitore. Katie George will be their sideline reporter. And, of course, the SEC Network sticking with Tom Hart, Jordan Rogers, and Cole Kublik back for a 7th consecutive season on their primetime game. So that will be a lot of fun. All right, there you have it. There's the latest news going on around the conference. Coming up next, we're going to preview the Tennessee Vols with our buddy Eric Cain. That's coming your way in just a second. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And guys, I want to remind you this episode is presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, FanDuel is football season is upon us, and we're about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you guys a chance to win all season long. We told you about this earlier this week, but right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets back every time they win throughout the regular season. So what you do is you go on there, you pick any team to win the Super Bowl, you make a bet, and you will get bonus bets for every victory that team gets. You can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, tons of stuff you can do there. So go visit them right now, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start earning those bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go take some time to visit FanDuel and include those money lines, props, all that stuff going on around your team every time they win. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is the place to go ahead of the start of football season. Tennessee is such an interesting team to me this year because this is fans got very excited last year. The win over Alabama, Hendon Hooker having a fantastic year. It felt like, Tennessee is back is what it almost, but here's the danger. Texas did this a couple years ago. Yeah. We're back, and then we saw them take a step backward. How does Tennessee avoid taking that step backward?
I've studied up on Josh Heupel as a play caller in the SEC and as a head coach the last couple of years, whether it be at UCF or at Tennessee, and just doing the research on, he's had top 10 offenses, leading the nation in scoring in total last year. And if you go back all the way to 2018, he's had a couple of different quarterbacks, and these quarterbacks are not the same, types of people. And he's found success with every single quarterback. And so I don't like having blind faith because I think that's when you get in trouble. But we talked about this on Locked On Vols. If you look at the stats, and even if you go back to his time at Oklahoma with different quarterbacks as a play caller or as a quarterback's coach, the success has followed Josh Heupel. So, is Joe Milton going to be Hendon Hooker? No, Joe Milton's going to be Joe Milton. Will that be good enough to get Tennessee where it was last year? 10 wins in the regular season, 11 wins in the bowl game. We'll find out, but I have faith the offense is going to score. I have faith the offense is going to score around 40 points, 38, 40 points a game, be a top 10 offense in the league. And I really do believe the defense, if you just take a couple more steps, took a couple of steps last year, play some complementary football, improve the back end a little bit. And I think this team will win a lot of those toss-up games, on the road at Florida to begin the season in week 3, at home against A&M, at home against South Carolina, and then, of course, Alabama, and the big one in November, that'll be Georgia.
Yeah. Will we see more Joe Milton running this year?
It's a great question. That was a part of Hendon Hooker's game that was really underrated. They called a few designs, sure, but if the pocket collapse, just take what the defense gives you. And I think that's going to be a work in progress for Joe Milton because he's not had that opportunity in a while, but it was a big part of what Tennessee did last year. So, we'll see. As a backup and mop-up duty, Joe Milton was not shy. He'd take it and run. When he moved into the starting role with the injury to Hendon Hooker, he was very protective of his body. So I think it's just going to be something that grows as the season goes on. I think they'll call some. He shedded about 10 pounds and gotten a little leaner this offseason to help in that regard. But no doubt about it, Hendon Hooker helped Tennessee's offensive line out a lot last year and helped Tennessee's offense out with just the ability to extend plays and take what the defense was giving them.
It looked like he had a little bit more touch on his ball. In the small sample size we saw at the end of last year. How important is that for Milton, having a little bit more touch? We know he can throw it 80 yards, but having that touch where he's connecting with receivers.
Well, it's huge because if you go back and look at his stats, back to being a starting quarterback in Michigan, the thing that's always plagued him is completion percentage, quarterback rating. He's not been a very accurate passer. And he was not a very accurate passer his first couple of quarters as Tennessee's starting quarterback in 2021. But last year he was. And again, small sample size, but I think he completed 65% of his passes. That's easily a career high for Joe Milton. And so if you can get a little bit more than that, I think that's going to be huge for him. He'll overthrow Joe will be yelled at Neyland Stadium a couple of times this year, no doubt about it. But if you can hit on those short to intermediate passes to set up those deep bombs, I think that's the step he's got to take. And it looks, well, again, from the sample size last year, it looks like he's taken a step in that regard.
I love Bazooka Joe. That's just no better nickname.
Yeah.
What about the rest, the other pieces on the offense? Do we feel good about the offensive line?
Offensive line, a lot of questions. You're replacing Darnell Wright at number 10 overall at right tackle. You're replacing Jerome Carvin, a 4-year starter at left guard. John Campbell coming over from Miami. He's going to slide in and start at left tackle. And then you got the 2 tackles that played that last year. Flipping over to the right side with Gerald Mincy and J.J. Crawford. We'll see who wins that battle. But overall, Tennessee's got to find a left guard. That's a huge question right now. It's going to be Ollie Lane, a longtime reserve. It's going to be Addison Nichols, a rising sophomore. Andre Carrick coming over from Texas will have an opportunity there. Offensive line will not be as talented as last year, obviously, but I do think that it's going to be good enough to where it'll allow Tennessee to do what it needs to do.
What about the backfield? I know the running back, Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, a lot of those guys were banged up in the spring. We didn't see much of them in the spring game. Where are we with the running backs?
The offseason talk is Jalen Wright's gonna really kind of break out this year. He's good friends with Jalen Hyatt, and of course Jalen Hyatt had that breakout year last year. I'm not saying that it's going to be to that extreme, but he's continued to put on good weights. Adding the armor, as Jerry Mack says. I think he's explosive. I think he was Tennessee's best back last year, but he just didn't get a whole lot of run, no pun intended. I still think it's going to be a Jabari Small and Jalen Wright sharing the workload. You have Dylan Sampson as well, who looked good as a true freshman. You add to it with Cam Selden. I think Tennessee's running back room, I don't think it's going to be the best of the SEC, but I think it's one of the deepest and, one of the better looking units top to bottom, just from experience alone.
Yeah, it's and we know they were maybe an underrated running team last year that, Hendon Hooker grabbed all the headlines, but they ran the ball really well.
Well, that's the thing about Josh Heupel's offense. Everyone thinks it's an air raid. It's not an air raid. For Tennessee to do what it needs to do, it needs to run the football. And in 2 years at Tennessee, Josh Heupel's run game, he's averaged 200 yards rushing a game.
Right.
And so, again, that's just they run the ball very, very well.
More with Eric Cain in just a second, but first I want to remind you guys this episode presented to you by our friends over at Birddogs. Look, Birddogs, they've been making you guys look good all summer long. Hopefully you've taken advantage and checked out their website, all the great products they got going on there. They got the stretch khaki shorts designed to fit slimmer through your thigh and give you that truly sculpted look. I'm telling you right now, this is what you need ahead of tailgating season. If you're looking to get back on campus in the next couple of weeks to go tailgate and go be in attendance for your team's kickoff, week 1, week 2, whatever, it's still going to be hot as the dickens out there. You want to make sure you're sporting your Birddogs. They invented that cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but it stretches so you get that waist slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Of course, they use the anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all season long. Go check them out right now at birddogs.com. Make sure you put locked on /locked on college and enter the promo code Locked On College. That is going to get you that free white tech hat with your order. It's birddogs.com /Locked On College. Use the promo code Locked On College to get that free white tech hat. You will not want to take your Birddogs off all season long. We promise you. Let's talk about the defense. We know there were some good moments last year. There were some bad moments. Where are you on this defense?
Yeah, again, like I said a moment ago, I think, knowing the South Carolina game happened, you can't erase it just because it was so bad. But the defense really did take some steps last year in the right direction. Now, the secondary's got to improve. You return pretty much everybody minus one safety. You add to that with Gabe Judy-Lawley and some freshmen that you like. Can you be at a point this year to where, okay, we're going to start the same guys, but once you make a mistake, we have faith to where we'll go get you out of that game. Tennessee couldn't do that the last couple of years in the secondary. So that's the question I have there. But linebacker, as deep as that room has ever been, Tennessee's going to play 5 to 6 linebackers. You feel good about that. And the defensive line with Rodney Gardner, those units over his career, they get better and better and better as the year goes on. Tyler Barron, can he finally stay healthy and do something for Tennessee? And replacing Byron Young, that's a big loss up front as well, but Amari Thomas is going to help with that.
Who will lead the team in sacks?
That's a good question. Man, Tennessee's got 4 Leos that are going to play. and they can package it up in pass rushing situations and all that. But you got Roman Harrison, who's been there 5 years, it feels like. He plays a lot of snaps, but he doesn't get home a lot. And then you had the high upside guys, the James Pierce, the Joshua Josephs, and the true freshman and Caleb Herring. All these guys are long, explosive. I think they're all going to play. So I would say it's probably going to come out of that bunch. But for right now, I will say give me Joshua Josephs, I think, who will lead Tennessee in sacks.
All right, we'll look for number 19 there to make an impact. Looking at the schedule, it's a fun opener. I mean, Virginia I don't think is very good, but it's going to be a fun one. I hate that it's already set for 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern, the early kickoff. But that, then Austin P, those should be nice, good warm-ups before you head to the Swamp.
Yeah, and that game at Florida is going to be huge in Week 3. But you're right; you got to take care of business first. And you're exactly right in the fact that it's a Power 5 opponent. It's not a gimme, but they're not very good, and so that'll be a great warm up in Week 1 for what's going to be a home game, essentially, just not played at Neyland Stadium. And then Austin P, and then of course that Florida game's a tone setter. Chris, you haven't won in the Swamp since 2003. You just snapped a 6-game losing skid. Last year. You've only beaten them twice since 2004. I mean, that's going to be huge for a team in Florida that's down this year. It's truly going to set the tone for the season, in my opinion, for Tennessee.
Yeah, it really is. When I run through the schedule, I kept coming back to that Florida game and just saying that feels like it's the most important because it's, the implications there. And Florida's down. Like, you can't lose to those guys while they're down. It's just it would definitely sidetrack the entire season. Outside of that game, what's the biggest pitfall you feel?
Okay, so you're at Florida, of course. I think an underrated game that no one's really talking about, of course, because of what happened last year, South Carolina, comes to Neyland Stadium right before that bye week. And you would think, Tennessee should have won that game last year. Of course, it didn't. But being back at Neyland Stadium, you like the Vols in that one at this point in time. But you have that bye week. Then you have A&M. What's A&M going to look like? Is Jimbo Fisher allowing Bobby Petrino to call plays, and is he admitting it to the media yet? Goodness gracious. But that team could be a total disaster, or it could be one of the sharpest-looking teams in the SEC by that point. So, and plus, they played Bama the week before, and Tennessee has a bye week, so I think that's huge, a home game. Then, of course, you get the third Saturday in October in Alabama. You go to Kentucky. Those games are going to be truly tough, and all that's leading up to Georgia. So, it's another SEC schedule. There's not too many off weeks.
I got crushed by Tennessee fans.
No.
Because I said, I think they might lose that Kentucky game. And they're like, we don't lose to Kentucky. I'm like, guys, Kentucky's actually a pretty good squad.
So you got to tote that line. I give mad respect to Kentucky because, again, I think Stoops is good. I think they got a tremendous upgraded quarterback.
Yeah.
And I've been very respectful of Kentucky in the past, but you always got to follow it up with, but again, this is a team that Tennessee historically has had no issue with, just like historically Florida has not really had any issue with Tennessee as well. But to your point, I think Kentucky, questions on the offensive line. They got to figure that out, of course. Can you get back to being one of the best running games in the SEC? And, of course, I think you just got a whole lot better without Will Levis and steps in Devin Leary. If Devin Leary is Devin Leary of 2021, Kentucky's going to surprise a lot this year.
Yeah, I think Kentucky's got one of the most underrated receiving corps in the SEC.
With Key and Barryon Brown and
Tavion Robinson's back.
Tavion Robinson,
It's a pretty good collection of receivers, and those freshmen last year are going to be even better as sophomores.
No.
Of course, the Alabama game everybody points to. It's fascinating, though, come October 21st, will Alabama have their quarterback thing? They'll have it figured out, but, what's that starter look like at that point? Is he going through some ups and downs, some trial and error? I think it's a good spot. All of the Alabama fans jumped on revenge game. We're going to stick it back to Tennessee and all that, but again, I don't know what Alabama's going to look like. So a winnable game for Tennessee, but they're going to have to play really well.
Yeah, of course, and plus it's going to be on the road. Alabama, damn good roster, damn good football team, and even if you don't have as talented of a quarterback, you're still going to be good, right? Remember Alabama, from the early 2010s. It was great defense, great run game, game manager, quarterback, and you won national championships that way. We haven't seen that lately, but potentially that could be what it is this year. Nick Saban just brought in one of arguably his best recruiting class ever as a head coach. So I don't believe it's going to be Jalen Milroe. I think it's going to be either Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner. But you're right. There will be some growing pains, and that game's going to be on the road. But just knowing, if you're Tennessee, just knowing that you did it I think it's one of the biggest things. Like you beat Alabama last year.
Yeah.
It is not impossible. It can be done. I think that should give them confidence. Plus, they should be playing pretty well at that point in the schedule. So we'll see.
Yeah, finally breaking through and winning that game.
Yeah.
Can they make it back to back? I mean, goodness.
Yeah.
Knoxville burned down. Last thing for you, give me the prediction. What's the record right now? You could change before the season gets here, but where do you have Tennessee right now?
I could change, get 12-0. 12-0. I think the expectation, I think maybe we've even talked about this. I think the expectation should be where you were last year, but knowing if you come up a game short of that, it's okay. I mean, you lost. I mean, that's still, in my opinion, that's still sustaining success. I mean, you lost Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyde, Cedric Tillman, Byron Young, Darnell Wright. You lost all these guys, and you still get 9 regular season wins. I think that'd be a heck of a year. So I think this team can win 10 games. I do. But there's also a couple of toss-up games that can go either way. I say 10 wins, but if Tennessee finishes with 9 wins, I think that's a good year. And I think that further solidifies that Tennessee is back, and it's not going to be a Texas situation.
All right, I lied. One more for you. Nico
Iamaleava.
Yeah, still can't say it. How much do we see of him this year? And how much will we get to if Milton struggles at all? Do fans start calling for him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 100. The first incompletion, Gordy. I mean, come on. This is Overthrow Joe. This is the $8 million man on the bench, right? Reportedly. If all goes well, you're not going to see much of Nico unless, it's a blowout situation, kind of like Joe last year. And Nico is a competitor, of course, but he's come in, he said, that's what he told us in spring. He was like, hey, I want to be to Joe what Joe was to Hendon last year. I want to be another set of eyes. I want to be a sponge. I want to soak up all these knowledge. I want to be a resource for him. He's like, hey, this is Joe's team. Doesn't mean I'm not competing. Doesn't mean I'm not trying, because I am. But I recognize this is Joe Milton's team. So if you're a Tennessee fan, hopefully you don't see a whole lot of him. But, yes, I mean, if Joe Milton struggles continuously, depending on where Nico is in his progression, you probably will get a look a little bit. And the anticipation and the clamoring from the fans will 100% be there. So, again, what does Joe Milton look like in week 6, week 7? I am so intrigued to see what he can do week after week after week.
He is Eric Cain, Locked On Vols. Eric, always good to see you, man. Thanks for the time.
Hey, thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Our thanks again to Eric Cain for joining us to talk all things Vols. We'll be back tomorrow. And shout out to our everydayers. Come back to check us out every day. We'll talk more fall camp takeaways as we count down the days. Guys, look, it is 3 weeks away. We got Florida and Utah coming up. We got Vandy, Hawaii. We got South Dakota versus Mizzou. All that will get us going. And then, of course, the whole Saturday slate into the Sunday night Labor Day game with LSU and Florida State down in Orlando. So there's tons of stuff coming your way these next couple weeks. I can't wait. It's going to be here before we know it. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Once again, shout out to our everydayers. Keep coming back, checking us out every day. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.